start this meeting and we'll do the pledge of the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this is actually a joint meeting, and if I'm not mistaken, it's only to reference one item.
Yeah, so the way the special meetings work for commissioners is there's a statute that says you can call special, but when you call it, you can only discuss items that the meeting has been specifically noticed for. That same statute doesn't exist for council, but considering it's an executive, a special joint meeting, in this scenario, I suggest that we stick to what the meeting was noticed for, and that is what is on the agenda.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, we never bring ours to order, so you, if you have to do yours.
I'll bring the county council to order. We have all present except for Eric Gillespie, and J.R. Ward is on his way, so he'll arrive late.
Okay. So, I guess let me give a little background, and our attorney is probably gonna step in here and say some stuff too, but, been for probably 3 years, the, State Board of Accounts has requested that, the, auditor's office, every time we go through an exit interview with the audit, they always bring up how the Visitors Commission is established, how it works, and have told us numerous times in exit interviews for the county audit that we need to fix it. And so, like I said, for 3 years that I've known, and it may be even longer, it's just been kind of pushed down the road, pushed down the road, pushed down the road. So, so what we did last year, I believe we had a meeting that I guess we had a couple of meetings, but what was discussed was bringing it into officially bringing it into the county, which we found out later that it has always been a county department. And the reason being is that the innkeeper's tax is a tax that an organization, I guess, and you can clarify what I'm saying, is that it's the reason the State Board of Accounts was having an issue with it was that it was a non-governmental identity accepting tax dollars or innkeeper's tax, and they wanted it under the umbrella of the county. So in turn, it originally, I think, when we found some documentation, and I'll let our attorney speak of that in a second, but that it was determined that it was always a county department. It was created when it first was done that way, but it was never set up, I guess, that way. So, as two boards, the Board of Commissioners and the council, determined that this is the year that we're going to fix it, and so we had those meetings, discussed it, whether we were going to do it as a 501c3 or do it as bring it in and make it a county department. And if some of you remember, it actually was voted to a 501c3, and then I had some, all along I had some questions that I never got answered in the way I guess I could understand them. And after that meeting was over, I had a couple people reach out to me and explain it in a different way. And so the next commissioners meeting, I actually called for a vote, and I changed my vote and to keep it as a county department and not hire an outside firm to run our visitors board. So that's where we're at tonight, is that as of January 1 of 2023, it is now a county department, and Some of this meeting here, or actually this entire meeting is based off of that information that we're trying to figure out or discover or to create what the board's gonna look like, how it's gonna be ran, how it's gonna be structured, where the books are gonna go, who's running, how that's all gonna be structured, and so that we can move forward with the Visitors Commission. So I'm gonna turn it over to our attorney and let him say.
And just to clarify, I mean, it's not, you did not vote on whether or not it was a county department or not, just to be clear. The State Board of Accounts that audits, all governmental entities and is specifically required to audit the Visitors Commission as part of that by statute, came down and said, it is a county department. That was noticed to the county, I think, at least on one occasion that I know of, it was said specifically in writing, it's a county department. The choice at that point was whether or not to subcontract with a third-party entity to manage the day-to-day operations of what the statute outlines the Visitors Commission should be doing, or to employ employees to do that through the county. If you remember, there was an individual who came down and talked about setting up a 501c3, that they would set up their own board, that they would then contract with the county, and that the county would, the 501c3 would have its own employees, and the boards would effectively, or could be, identical to one another. I mean, that was the original idea, but again, the Visitors Commission board, you didn't decide that they were a county department, that was decided for you. I realize that it has never been treated as such, and that was part of the problem from a State Board of Accounts perspective. So I think we're at a juncture where one of the questions is, now that it is a county department, and obviously the way this all worked to start out with was county council adopts a innkeeper's tax at a particular rate. When they adopt that tax, the commissioners can create a Visitors Commission board to manage that fund. But ultimately, it's a fund that still runs through council, the budget's still run through there and approved by statute, and I mean, I assume it always has been, and will continue to do that. But the actual, fund needs to be run through the auditor's office, is my take at this point. Like any other accounting department does. The bank accounts, where the monies are, investment accounts, those types of things, the access to those there needs to be a policy relative to who has the authority to access it from the Visitors Commission. And there needs to be a outline of that. I mean, that money basically needs to be turned over to county accounts. The ledgers that exist and date back to, the previous cycles or budgetary years for the Visitors Commission need to be turned over to the auditor's office. And I think one of the reasons we're here today is to try and figure out if we have moved the ball at all on any of those particular issues. And then, once we figure that out, we can kind of address some other things that Mike brought up. But again, I don't know if those have been. I don't know if Jennifer, if you know.
I don't have any that I'm aware of.
Okay.
There has been a request.
Okay.
My comment was there was a request for a meeting to discuss some of the budgetary cuts that were made. We were told that we were going to be given an audience to have that conversation. And I said at that point in time, it would be a little premature to make any further moves until we have that information. So that's where it stands at this time.
So it stands that you're refusing to turn over,
No, sir. I'm not refusing to do anything.
Okay.
We had requested to discuss the budgetary cuts that were made, in particular to salaries. And,
we're not here today to talk about that,
okay.
and
I
it's not on
understand.
the agenda.
Nope, I understand.
And I understand
But
that-
that's part of the background information to allow you to understand.
I got you, and I understand that that is an issue, and that there's some people that want to talk about that. If you wanna talk about that, that's a specifically council issue. And you can go back and watch some of the tapes, they still have those on YouTube from the I think it was the very last session of 2022. I think that council wanted some materials. I think one was, that they were waiting on was the job descriptions, which Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy did turn over like the approved job descriptions. I don't know if you had those, but
We
I'm,
did not have those prior to that
okay,
last
then I'm
meeting.
gonna give those to council. Cause that was one thing they wanted to see before they talked about, you know, anything, but I mean, I wanna speak for you. Or any of you guys now sitting here, cause obviously it's a different council, but, it appeared to me that everybody was open to a discussion as to that issue, assuming that those things were provided. Another thing would probably be some, you know, comparisons between what that position would be at in any other circumstance, and probably just some, you know, longevity issues and things. But, and I'm not saying that that's not a forefront issue for everybody here, but to be clear, that money needs to be turned over now so that State Board of Accounts is gonna be here sooner rather than later to this cycle. And we need to know where those accounts are, you know, who has access to them, and they need to be transferred over to something that is under the umbrella of the County of Scott government's name. And I don't know if there are other types of accounts that wouldn't normally be in a governmental fund, like a CDL or something like that, or investment accounts. We have to figure out what to do with those, because those would not normally be something that the county would have, as in, we would not normally have a CDL in the name of Scott County. So, you know, those are questions that will take longer to answer of what to do exactly with those, but we need to know where they are. And then I think the ledgers should be fairly simple. I mean, that is just at a minimum, and I would be, you know, I think it's totally reasonable and fair for you guys to keep the copies so that you can continue to do the business that you've been doing. But, you know, the originals have to be turned over to the county record keeper, which is the auditor.
Well, and since it will be a county department, it's gonna run just like the other county departments. It's, you know, bills that you would have, you would send here and they would pay them and take it out of your account that you would have, just like the highway department or any other department, sheriff's department. They create bills over there, they send them over here, the auditor's office, you know, has a line item they pay it off of, and then, you know, it goes from there. So that's what we're talking about here, is that, you know, in the past, it hasn't been ran that way, and now the State Board of Accounts is telling us this is how it has to run. So like Zach said, it's, the auditor's office needs, everything's gonna have to run through her. Now, you have your own office, just like the highway does, and they have an admin down there. Everything's gonna, you know, still come to you, still goes to her, she's gonna take it off a line item. So, but those are things that State Board of Accounts told us absolutely has to happen. So, and as Zach says, you know, the farther we get down the road, the more complicated it's gonna be with the State Board of Accounts saying, what happened in the first 30 days, or what happened in the first 60 days, or
For
whatever.
an example, during COVID, there were situations where the State Board of Accounts kind of got behind and couldn't do, 2020, 2021. And when they came in to different departments across the state, I know it was frustrating for a lot of departments because, if something was wrong in 2020, it was gonna be wrong in 2021 too. So we're just trying to get to a place where we can get to a year, whether it's gonna be 2023 or 2024, where we can be back in compliance and not have any more dings from State Board of Accounts that we're not, again, this is not about mismanagement. I know that was said or like inferred or perceived at some point for anybody watching. That's not what's going on. We're talking about, just making sure that there are the proper protocols in place so that when we get audited, we can point State Board of Accounts to the things that we did and implemented to run this, like Mike said, like many other county departments. I wouldn't necessarily call it all county departments because they all run a little differently. But for instance, I would compare this situation much closer to, based on my reading of the statutes, the Health Department's board, okay? The Health Department's board has its own powers, it has its own responsibilities. They have a health officer who has his own powers, employs, his own staff and designates duties to them. I don't think that inter-office workings and things would change that much. It's just gonna be a change in where, ultimately a lot of these funds are located, whose name they're located on behalf of potentially, and making sure that the books are all, if the final books are all running out of one office, that by statute should be doing that. So,
And from a council's point of view, we cannot even begin to address any of your concerns until we have those books in front of us, so that we can do our job as with the financials, so.
That's right.
and then, and this is gonna be strange since we're sitting here talking about this, but who is on the board?
Well, let me introduce those that are present. Don Cooper is our president at the present time.
Excuse me,
Pardon?
would you mind, as you're introducing, telling who appointed each of those individuals?
That'd be very helpful.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Don was reappointed in 2022, so his term would then expire in 2024. Russ Comer is our vice president. He was unable to be here. Many of you probably know Russ from West Banco. He was appointed in 2022 by the city of Scottsburg. Those of you familiar with the innkeeper's tax, the largest municipality has
They get two, I think.
two, yes. The secretary is Jill Baker. Many of you know Jill as former highway director here at the county. She was appointed by the city in 2022, so her term expires in 2024. We had Jim Jonas that was filling a position that was vacated in 2022, and he was appointed in 2022, so his term would expire in 2024. We have Joe Gibson. Joe is here. Joe, you want to raise your hand? I think everybody knows Joe. He is a county appointment, and he is up for reappointment this year. Many of you know Joe being a local historian. We also have Jessica Collier, who is up for reappointment this year. Jessica is the brand manager for Holiday Inn Express and Suites here in Scottsburg. And then we also have David Wells. David is a 2023 county appointee as well. So just to recap everything, we've got Don Cooper, president, Russ Comer, vice president, Jill Baker, secretary. We have Joe Gibson, I failed to mention, he is our treasurer. Jim Jonas, county appointee, Jessica Collier, county appointee, and David Wells, county appointee.
Do all serve
Is
for
that
a
clear?
2-year term?
I'm sorry.
Do all serve for a 2-year term?
All of them are 2-year terms, yes, sir.
So Jim Jonas, was he a county,
He was a county
Appointed.
appointee,
and he replaced Todd, didn't
I believe so.
he? I believe so. I guess, is Jessica, you said
Jessica replaced Umar Patel.
You said Collier. On my list, it says Collins.
It's Jessica Collier.
Collier.
Alright, so this is wrong. So she is just the, she's the one we talked about, replaced Patel.
Yes, she replaced Umar Patel.
Yeah, okay. And she's up this year as well?
She would be up this year as well, for
Okay.
reappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Is she one of the, is it like 1 to 2 members? That, there's,
He didn't say that.
The hotelier.
I think it has to be
there's a
county.
specific piece where they have to be,
She is a hotelier, yes.
okay, yeah.
I don't think he said that Mr. Cooper is appointed by county as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So you have 2 members that are in the business of furnishing or renting rooms.
I'm sorry,
Furnishing or renting rooms.
we have one.
You have 1?
We have one.
Which is Mr. Collier.
Jessica, yeah.
Oh, it says if available and willing to serve.
We have, and just be open with everyone, we have been, as individuals have rolled off, or resigned their position or whatever, been refilling our board seats with individuals that have a direct line or a dotted line to tourism, because that is what our purpose is. And it's been individuals in the past that has not. You know, I'll use,
If they want, if they want to
board
work
president Todd Ritchie. Todd is a perfect example. Todd's a good guy, but he was not part, he was not involved in tourism. And that is
Three of these.
what we're looking to do and what
This
is
one.
set by
This one.
statute.
Statute requires a simple majority.
I'm sorry.
Statute requires a
He's
simple
not up, so
majority.
there's only two, she actually has to stay on that.
Are we in compliance with that?
You
Aaron?
know,
Well, you
there's
have,
only two.
Collier definitely counts.
Yes.
There's only two that's really got. This one.
Mr. Jonas, you said, is that seat vacant? He didn't want.
I'm sorry.
He just
The
said he's
Jim
not up
Jonas,
until
that
next
seat
year.
is vacant, he doesn't wanna continue on the board,
There's
or
only
he
two
just
that
came
was-
on?
No, he came on and, well, he took over a position
Okay.
that was being vacated. That particular position was reappointed in 2022. So he is filling out the terms of that position and would be up for reappointment in 2024. And Jim is with Go Milk Stuff.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
But if you commissioners do one, then you can use that, can't you? Because you guys do.
But probably the time he was appointed, they probably still had the restaurant stuff in there too, didn't they, out of the go?
Not at the time of his appointment.
Okay,
No,
because they were relying on a lot of interstate traffic at one point, coming in, tourists, people coming
No,
in.
only if they're,
Prior to COVID,
Hmm?
prior to COVID.
Yeah, yes, yes.
I think they closed the restaurant, Diane, just
So,
right after COVID.
Returning after
Collier,
Okay.
So they have a majority.
But I was
yes.
thinking that because they relied a lot on
3.
Jonas is
tourist
not
business
up.
at one point.
No, but
No, I
we're
know,
talking
I'm
about
They-
in the
they
tourism
were
industry.
more on
They
fire sales,
are
but they
in the
still have
tourism
industry.
To have the majority, you gotta have 4.
Right.
And we've only got 3 that are.
I just wasn't sure, I just figured
tourism
he
right
was,
now.
Yeah.
that's why they appointed him, I just assumed that, I didn't know, that was
One-
before my time,
No,
so.
it was basically to fulfill the requirement of bringing
Yes, one of them
more
is,
individuals involved in tourism to be on the board.
Then you should.
one of them will be.
Well, you have to have a simple majority that's involved in, it's worded a little strangely, but it's engaged in a convention, visitor, tourism, business, or involved in or promoting conventions, visitors, or tourism. Promoting visitors is pretty broad, but that's a simple majority must be of that description.
So is there anything in the state statutes it states how, cause from the things that I've read was that it would change the board to an advisory board and not to a board that is the sole
Well, I mean,
discretionary to,
I don't really look at it like advisory versus executive function in this type of situation, because, again, that's why I'm trying to compare it to the health board. Because the health board does have powers. It's not purely advisory, but there are things that the health board does that are advisory. For instance, recently there was a change to the way in which a health officer is selected. They changed that and made it very clear that a health officer now falls within the authority of the commissioners to appoint. And that if you can actually be removed from consideration as a health officer if you fail to be appointed after being recommended a certain amount of times by the health board. The health board, can't enter into contracts necessarily without the approval of the commissioners. There are things that they can't do, but they can respond to health crises or issue orders and things under the health code. So again, the members, the Visitors Commission has its own statute, and for us, with the Uniform County Innkeeper's Tax, that deals with commission powers. Accept and use gifts and grants, contributions from any public or private source under terms and conditions that the commission considers necessary. Sue and be sued, enter into contracts and agreements, make rules necessary for the conduct of its business, receive and approve, alter, reject requests and proposals for funding. After its approval, transfer money quarterly or less frequently from the fund to any Indiana nonprofit corporation to promote and encourage conventions, visitors or tourism in the county, and require financial or other reports from any corporation that receives those funds. So, those are the specific statutory powers that are delegated to the board members. I think the other issues I see as, at this point, it's gonna be run like a county department. They have county employees, those fall under, kind of quasi commissioner issues, and then there's obviously some council issues when it comes to approval of job descriptions, those types of things. Again, running their books through the county ledgers, just like any other department does. And how that works in practice, I think, it will be just the same as any other department.
so what you're saying is that they would propose a budget each year, to the council will approve or
Well,
set their budget.
and they already do that and have done it.
They've already done that to a point. I think this last year was the first year that it was more detailed, when we had asked for it, or the year before was when we asked for a more detailed budget, is when we finally got it. But it would have to be more line to line, like
Sure.
the other county departments. Where
The
it's
statute
very,
says you guys approve the budget.
Yeah.
So that's a part where, I'm sorry, the Visitors Commission does not have the authority to approve its own budget.
Right.
Statute says that's the fiscal body of the county.
Right.
They can prepare a budget, proposed,
Mhm.
submit it, and it says submit it for review and approval.
Right.
So, again, this is kind of a power sharing situation, not dissimilar to many areas of, government across the United States.
And that's where I'm trying to get out, is that it's mainly gonna run as it is now.
I don't see day-to-day operations changing to much of a degree, but who, you might have to report to
Or
those operations, who knows what's going on. There may be multiple groups now that have more of a, ongoing vested interest.
well, and I'm gonna go back to the highway department, cause it's easier to make an example of, is that Kevin gets a budget, but he comes in here and says, hey, I wanna go build this, or I wanna do this, or I wanna do that. He still comes here to get approval, goes to council, gets approval to spend the money. So would that be in the same, would that be in the same
Well, I mean, unless it's like
gesture
an
of?
appropriation, I don't know why you'd go to council.
Yeah, the only, when Kevin comes to us, it's to spend or move or, transfer within his budget or to get additional appropriations. So once we set the budget and the Visitors Commission decide to use that money, or however they decide to spend that budget, if they need to go above and beyond, then they need to come over to us. Or if
Okay.
they wanna move in between line items, then they need to come to the council.
That's, yeah.
Okay. So I guess on the question of the CDs,
I mean,
those would probably have
I
to,
don't know what the cash, like, I don't know what the rules are in terms of, the county having a CD in its own name. That's kind of part of the problem is, there was a point in time where, historically, Indiana was, a state that permitted government to invest privately. There was a massive economic collapse, and we altered the constitution of the state to prohibit that, and we allow it in very limited circumstances. Investment accounts, not necessarily the same thing, but in a CD, I mean, you're just rolling over, right? But, probably one of the safer types, but, again, I don't know how that would work, but I'm not sure.
Wouldn't it have to then be either cashed out and put in like a rainy day type fund, or have the CD in?
I think if they were
Government name?
using it like a rainy day fund, then you could create a fund within their, like, budget, for instance, that's a non-reverting,
Right,
rainy
cause I think
day.
that's what they were
Ish
using it for,
fund.
is it was there in case
It
something
becomes the
happened.
same thing, it just might not be,
It's just not a CD
CD.
well, it'd be in their
in their budget.
budget
Yeah.
and on a line item that,
And then,
Yeah.
and then the council would create that line item and the parameters within that line item that it can only be touched for these reasons.
Or they would have the ability to come and ask
And
to
ask.
move from that to another.
so I guess, Mike, do you have any questions?
At this point, this is exactly what I had anticipated would be our steps and procedures. What I will plan on doing is getting with Jennifer to discuss, I'll have to get with Russ Comer to get the information on the CDs. And at that time, break down on what's in each CD, when the or what the maturity date is. We just had two that did mature and rolled over. So we can get that information, and I'll begin working with Jennifer, and we'll work on this transition.
Is Russ Comer the treasurer?
No,
Oh, okay.
Vice President.
no, Russ,
Sorry.
just convenient having him on the board.
Sure,
as well
I'm
as,
just,
yeah.
And some of that, I'm not a councilman, but I mean, on some of that, I think Jennifer would probably have to reach out to State Board of Accounts and say, how do we, just like Zach's saying, it's a new animal, so how do we move this to here and still make it proper so that you're all happy with it, so.
well, that's the other thing, you don't wanna cash it out and then for some reason sort of like
A penalty.
a penalty against it.
Mhm.
We have 5, right? 5 CDs. 4, okay, we have 4 CDs that were established by our board. The first CD was established the year prior to the Henryville tornadoes. After the Henryville tornadoes, the board did invest just as a precautionary that if something were to happen of that significant measure to Scott County, that we could provide some assistance, it's not gonna be tremendous, but that's why those funds were established, just so those that are new, to your positions, have a little better understanding of the background.
I do have a question that was brought to our attention, this is off the subject a little bit, on your, I guess, your grant proposals, or your grant application. Was page 8, where it says non-disparage clause, I mean, was that in there prior to this new, I guess, this year?
It was presented this fall, and approved by our board.
There's a big problem with that clause.
Pardon me?
There's a big problem with that clause.
Okay.
So,
Have you
you're
seen it?
accepting public money,
It's at the bottom.
you're taxing
Bottom of the
people,
page.
and, the county citizens have a right to question, of public officials specifically, why something may have been done, why a choice was made, any of those types of things. I think specifically when you look at
So they have to
libel
agree to that
laws,
to get a grant.
what is defined as disparagement, what is defined as slander and defamation. First off, truth is always a defense.
Absolutely.
It's not so clear that truth is a defense there,
It's in the
The way
next
it's-
page too.
the way it's worded.
Where's the-
Second off,
It's at the very bottom, and then the next
as
page.
public officials, there's actually a higher standard to prove defamation than a private person whose life is not supposed to be in the public eye, or a different standard for public officials or issues of public concern. New York Times versus Sullivan says that in those types of circumstances, where a nation that allows comment on public figures, even if it might be wrong, even if it's factually incorrect. So in order to go after someone for that, that's why you're allowed to talk about President Trump or President Biden in any way you feel. Because they are public officials, and we live in a marketplace of ideas. The best ideas will rise to the top. So, I don't think that in this circumstance, a county department can be adding a clause to its provisions that limits public discussion in a way to try and hamper free speech, that would otherwise be permitted by the First Amendment. So, in this circumstance, I think that the clause is far too broad, and it prohibits people from voicing concerns that they may have, and they take the risk of essentially being subject to a lawsuit for, speaking about a public issue. I think that is a recipe to get us all, as a county, in a bad situation. Again, the standard is actual malice. You have to prove that they knew it was false when they said it to harm you, and that's a higher burden that you don't necessarily see across all types of defamation lawsuits. So, I do think there's a problem with that clause. I would suggest removing it entirely, but as a business commissioner board, you can enter into contracts, but that is, in my view, wholly antithetical to.
I have a question. If they decide that they're going to keep this in there, and since they are a government entity, then can we, as a governing body, then step in to protect ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of the problem. Now we're all in the same ship. So, go ahead.
I have a question. Now that we are all in agreement, we're all trying to come to a solution, and we have a county attorney, would there be anything wrong with him going through the whole grant application, reading it and pointing out anything else that may need to be revised?
Well, that's a good,
So, here's what I'll say is, I am totally fine with doing that if your board is okay with that. The issue that, I want everyone to understand, I'm glad this is a public meeting, is that, by statute, my client is the Board of Commissioners. So, I'm happy to review, considering I do believe it could affect my clients. But understand that, my loyalty always has to go back to the commissioners at any point if there was any issue, okay? So I'm more than happy to do that though, just with that understanding.
Well, I mean, as a board of commissioners, I think we'd encourage you to look at it so that we know that we're protected, because as some people may not know, or, I mean, any person or any county employee or any, department in the county, if they get sued, we get sued, so that they don't have the funds to pay out any lawsuit that comes to us, and we pay it, so if any department ever gets sued, we're getting sued, so, and David, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I know Zach, if we ask him to, he would do that, so does anybody else got any questions? Council, I'm not talking for you, but you guys got any questions or comments?
No, I think what I said earlier is that anything that really has to do with the council, we cannot address until the books have been turned over and are then part of the county, so that we have access to them, and then we can, otherwise we're just spinning our wheels and spitting out numbers, so in order for us to make the best decisions possible, we can't really, there's nothing for us to say until we get the books, so.
And I think what you're saying is, you guys not you guys, the past council, create a salary ordinance of some sort, but they were basing that off of nothing really, because they didn't have the books to know what.
We had nothing, so,
Yeah.
so we.
And that was the past council, not this one.
The other issue is the job descriptions, we have to see those and approve them, be in agreement
Which
before
we
we
should
can.
have, I just want
Yeah.
you guys should have tonight.
And once we have that and what funds we have to work with, then I think all of us collectively are more than willing to entertain a conversation with you or your board or however you see fit.
Can ask for more, sounds good.
I think they had to have a starting point for last year and to finalize that budget, and that's how they came up with whatever I don't even know what they came up with, but.
So are
Mike,
there,
can I ask one more question?
Yes,
Hypothetical. At the next meeting, someone comes with a grant application, wanting some funds. What's the procedure? Does the board approve that and then bring it to the commissioners for second approval? Or what's the procedure?
and that was one of the questions I had, but I think,
I think effectively you're still, a grant application is essentially like it's a contract request basically, okay? So by statute, you still have the authority to do that as a board. I think that just, again, with the idea that it is a county department, I mean, we get regular updates about how that is working, and I know that, Mike has been here at multiple meetings during my tenure here. So I'm not saying that wasn't happening, but maybe, like, again, I think it's a little different than any of these other county departments, and it's strange that the statute says two things: can contract in its own name and can sue and be sued. Because when I see those two things in any other circumstance, I normally think that's an independent entity. But we're just trying to go by what the state government is telling us to do. And, in this circumstance, I would say, I think my clients would appreciate it if either quarterly, monthly, I'm not sure what is the best, maybe monthly is better. I mean, maybe not every meeting, but, having somebody from the Visitors Commission at a at a Board of Commissioners meeting to present like, you know, these are the applications we received, this is what it was about, this is what we decided, you know, that kind of thing.
And I can say, I think I can speak for the board, that we would appreciate, as a council, appreciate that too. Come in with a monthly, almost like a monthly ledger, hey, this is what we've spent, how we've spent it, where we've spent it, so that we have a pretty good idea of where those funds are going as well.
Lindy, I'm sorry, a couple of questions. That's fine, we can do that. I'll just work with Jennifer and make sure that we get on the agenda for the commissioners on a consistent level. So if it's the first of the month or the second meeting of the month, we'll figure that out, whatever's convenient. That's not a problem. And as far as the grant applications are concerned, and I just want some clarification, as long as we're not exceeding what we had budgeted for that particular line item, we're good.
Yes.
And we'll just come in with a regular update. And Lindy, what we'll do, you're familiar with our budget to actual report that I've shared with you guys before. I'll just bring that in on a monthly basis so you can see how we are, where we are, and address any questions that the council will have at that time.
And for me, and I think maybe some of the others on the board, monthly, I think would be good in the infancy stage of this, and then maybe we can move to more of a quarterly or something as it moves on, but as we're all learning and growing together, we do it more often, make sure checks and balances, and we're all on the same page with where money's going, so we can answer for it, would be about it.
My apologies. I'll hand it off.
Well, also, I'm sure you're aware of the Mayberry Days that are coming at the end of June.
I'm sorry.
The Mayberry Days that are coming at the end of June, I'm sure you guys are understanding. Eric Lowry contacted me probably before Christmas, and actually, it was actually before Thanksgiving, and said that there was possibly an opportunity for that to come here. And he's been to it every year that they've ever had it, and he said it's an influx of about 10,000 people in about 2 or 3 days. So and he goes, these people come and stay, and he goes, they've had people from 50 states. So
We met with Eric, and he's got a grant application that's completing that, and it's on our agenda to present on the 7th.
yes, I told him to come talk to you. So I know he went to the city the other night, and I think they're giving him some money as well. So, but I mean, 10,000 people in a couple of days, eating in restaurants and staying in hotels, should be a good influx of people, so.
We also have the Homesteader Conference that's coming up in April.
What's that?
Well, I just found out about it last week, and it's bringing in, they've rented the fairgrounds. It's being put on by some organization, a homesteading organization. There's already presenters coming from 5 to 6 different states that are going to be staying here. They're going to have camping, but I'm sure some will probably stay in hotels as well. There'll be, classes on beekeeping and foraging and all kinds of homesteading type, self-sustainability type things. And I was talking to a girl online yesterday, and her family's driving from 5 hours away to come down here to spend the whole 3 days. So that would be something that we would really want to try to play it, because that right now is really becoming a big thing, these conferences like that with self-sustainability, with times being the way they are, and people are trying to learn more about farming and different things like that. So it's a homesteaders conference. It's going to be here. I can give you the date if you don't already have it. I think the chamber has it. I think that may be where I saw it.
Okay.
If not, I can get it to you.
Please contact
You got
us.
fair board members behind you, they could probably.
I'll have to look at that. But you are right about, it's a Band-Aid.
But that's a wonderful thing, and I would love to see our fairgrounds utilized more on things, I mean, any type of thing like that.
There's
Because
only
that brings in
two
people
in the
from
renewal
other
of the
states and
GM.
communities.
I agree completely.
They said they will
From the Holiday
have
Inn, she
several,
has to be renewed.
like vendors, they've rented
One of the.
most of the buildings.
Yes.
They're gonna do everything from like make jelly to
Well,
kill a chicken and
Or,
clean it and everything.
And I saw that they're opening it up, you have to buy tickets for it, but after a certain time, they're opening up to the public and they're gonna have live music and anybody can come in free after the ticket people and participate.
I gotta go back to that. Did you say there's gonna be live chicken killing? Is a pentagram involved?
So anyway, that's, it's
Or
mainly
should.
like how to take care of yourself and not go to the grocery store.
I gotta be,
I'm still,
It's a 3-day event,
yeah.
Homesteaders
One other
Conference.
question, Mike.
It's got another name
For
to
the
it,
board,
but I can text it
you
to
made
you.
reference that the statute said that the board could be sued and was like, what was, how did you state
It's
that?
sue and be sued.
Could be, okay. That being the case, should the board, have an attorney, available like you guys, or is the county commissioner?
It's really up to you. The problem I see in terms of retaining a full-time attorney for you guys is you've got a fund that can only be used for very specific reasons.
Okay.
But, you know.
I think it'd be like any other department, David. I think if the highway department doesn't have an attorney, I mean, and he is the commissioner's attorney, but he's also, you know, we ask him to look at other things, and I mean,
I say that advisement to every single elected official in the county. I'm not trying to single anybody.
You just made that statement and made me think, well,
Yeah.
maybe the
He-
county
he will-
commission should have.
he will give us legal advice on every department. I mean, if the sheriff has an issue, or if the health department or the highway department has issues, it goes to him, cause we ask him to look into this and tell us and give us our advice, and then we have other attorneys that actually handle that, so. But,
I mean, is there anywhere?
But if it comes down to an argument between the council and the commissioners, he's gonna side with the commissioners,
Yeah,
because they're paid.
well, but you have to go
I'm
get your
gonna
own
get a better,
attorney.
we're gonna get a better one now.
So, anyway, that's, so, Zach, you have anything else?
So disposition of funds. Like,
When did you
all
say
money
that
coming
thing
into
was?
possession
April?
of the commission shall be deposited.
September.
I got it. I
This
can-
ain't vested,
I don't know if I
made in
still got
accordance with statutes related to the handling of public funds. They're subject to audit. There's a specific section of it dealt with, how the tax money was actually supposed to be used. I could-
Patriot Homesteaders Conference. He
I
asked
asked
me,
her.
he asked me, Patriot Homesteaders Conference, April 28th, 29th, and 30th at the Scott County Fairgrounds. I've already got my tickets. I'm
Big
going.
chicken killing.
Okay.
We'll be on national news, Pete will be out there.
Money
It's the 28th, 29th, and 30th of April.
Money in the convention visitor and tourism promotion fund, or transferred to such fund under subsection B may be expended only to promote, encourage conventions, visitors, tourism within the county. Expenditures under this subsection may include, but are not limited to, expenditures for advertising, promotional activities, trade shows, special events, and recreation. So there's some limitations, I guess. You know, that's the only impediment I would see, but, you know, and like, it doesn't say, again, in comparison to another board that I think has individualized powers, health board has a statute that talks about hiring an attorney specifically. So, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you no, but, no. There are some issues potentially if money were to be, there was an unauthorized transfer or use of funds. It's a level 6 felony.
I was just gonna say, so speaking of the board, since they're now, or always have been, but now they're operating as a county entity, does that mean that the commissioners then have appointing authority to the board?
We always did.
I think
You always did?
Yeah, we always appointed our people to the board, so
let's see.
we have 1, 2,
The ordinance
3,
from
4,
2003 that created the board.
We have-
Basically just like mirrored the statute in California.
We have 5 appointees, the city has 2.
Yeah.
So, speaking of that,
If I may, Mike, just.
Go ahead.
Let me understand. In the past, the commissioners have been very, very open to us bringing individuals for recommendations to them. Jim Jonas is a perfect example, Jessica Collier is another example. So we have worked that way, just bringing those individuals to the table for discussion and for appointment.
Okay.
It's been a
They do that for
good
the
relationship.
health board as well.
so, speaking of that, is there, and I'm asking our attorney, is there a deadline of the commissioners appointing the board or the council or the visitors board approving their own?
Are there 2 members that are up for appointment currently?
Be 3.
There's one's a renewal and she has to be on there.
Or Jessica?
Jessica Collier?
Jessica would be, yes, okay, but she technically, because she was filling Umar Patel's,
She fits a
role.
very specific role.
Pardon me?
She fills a very specific role. You got
Yes.
Yeah.
And then David Wells and Joe Gibson are the 2 that we would
So
bring for reappointment.
Mr.
the
Gibson.
deadline that I would say exists by ordinance and by state law says basically that if there's a vacancy, which at this point, any reappointment, again, I think that's a vacancy period, okay? If you wait 30 days after a vacancy, it falls to the commission, the visitors commission, to make the appointment. So, again, in the original outline of when the board was first set up, it uses February 1st as a deadline for the initial appointments, because I guess it considered that 30 days after the first of the year. I would suggest that you have until January 30th.
So Mike, I guess what you're saying is that your recommendation would be to leave the board as it is?
That would be my recommendation, yes, sir.
The only problem that I can see with that, and I'm just being honest, is, well, based on our count, we've got 3 members who qualify under the subsection that is required for being involved in like some type of tourism, visitors.
Jill Baker, because of her role with the city of Scottsburg and events manager, has been one of those dotted lines that we have counted in the past.
She's a city.
She's a city. She's a city.
What's her role at the city?
She is the assistant to the mayor.
Yeah.
Part of her responsibility, though, was putting on the fall festival, and that was her primary responsibility as the coordinator for that, and so,
So that would still leave us one short.
pardon me?
That would leave us one short, cause are you considering Russ Comer as one of those as well, or not? As a banker?
Dennis is not, no.
Joe Gibson is, I mean, you can, that's all right.
Ah.
Mike, I came on the board representing the traveler, the people who stayed in hotels. Being a traveler and salesman for 40 years, I spent 60, 70 nights a year in motels. And I said, I think the traveler needs a representative, and that was my purpose for serving on the board.
You get that?
And Joe has been, and still is, with the election fire department and the Hope Center, so he would technically qualify, because they come for grants every once in a while. Myself, I was just asked to serve on the board when I retired, and, I was doing so as a civic duty, so.
So I just have a question, so these people, like Jill and Joe, were filling those spots because they did, like Jill did just one, like the,
Like Jessica Jones was,
like she just
she
did
replaced her.
one specific, and I'm not taking away from what you do, but I'm just saying it's, you're doing the Old Settlers, and then Jill is doing, like, one specific thing instead of looking at somebody who, and I don't mean this disrespectful in any way, shape, or form, but do you see what I'm saying? Like encompassing more than one specific
Well, I
event.
might say that I'm also the county historian.
Okay,
I can tell you all kinds of stuff about history of Scott County you have never heard before.
well, I'm sure, but when they're,
That's mine,
but
he knows.
But when he is saying to us, you know,
That's
this is
where we
why,
go, yeah.
this is why we consider you the appointment, and this is why we consider Jill Baker the appointment, those are two specific things, instead of looking for somebody to fill that role that may encompass more than just one specific thing is what I'm trying to understand.
Have we ever had anybody on the board from the campgrounds? Because I think tax applies to them as well, does it not?
No, they are exempt from innkeepers, they're exempt from innkeepers tax, but they are part of the tourist
Yeah,
industry,
do
yes.
have we ever had anybody from, Hardy Lake Campground or Tree Lake or whatever, or Yogi Bear or whatever it is on the board? I mean, they have to pay the tax like everybody else, I mean, the other.
No, they're exempt.
No,
Oh, they are exempt, I'm sorry, I thought that they had at one time.
That's my fault. Because that's my fault, because I was with the RV Association at the time, and I was the one that went to the state and had them exempted out.
And made them come off. But actually they do, I mean, even if they're not paying the tax, they are contributing
So is that?
to our tourism.
Just being
I
one.
mean, again, and I understand the only one that I think is potentially questionable. I understand your experience, I'm not discounting that at all. But it makes it seem like you have to be actively involved in it. I mean, engaged in a convention, visitor or tourism business, or involved in or promoting conventions, visitors, or tourism is what, and that makes it seem like it's present, you know, situation going on. I realized when you first got on the board it may have been, but that's the only issue I could see as it relates to the appointments right now.
I guess I want to ask a question is if and I'm trying to figure out, because when I was advised that it had to be a simple majority, but I mean, would a person that owns a restaurant be something that would use
It
that?
could be.
It's hospitality.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's not, I wouldn't use the word hospitality, just because the statute
Well, you
doesn't
know
use
what
it.
I mean.
I know, but I mean, I think that, for instance, you know, I went to Louisville the other night to go to a Shakes. I didn't go there for any other reason. That's part of tourism is kind of the, I would consider that, based on what I'm reading, at a minimum, promoting visitors. So, I mean, that's my take on that.
See, that's why I don't like sitting with people behind me, because I can't see what's going on.
Marty, you have a question?
I've always got your back. I do have something to add to Diane's comments about Raintree Lake. It's called Raintree Lake KOA, because they did get, association with KOA now, which they have been working towards since they purchased the place, and have upgraded, the pool and several other facilities there. And then last year, they contacted the Plan Commission because they added, one cabin. They intend to add other cabins, because as well as being an RV camper type facility, they also have to offer, cabin facilities. So it might be advantageous if you would contact them, because I fully expect to get maybe at least one more application. The cabin that they ordered came complete, and it cost them like $150,000 to add it.
Is it 950 square foot?
No.
So
But
it's-
nonetheless, I mean,
it's a
it's very,
shed.
very, very nice, but they do intend to add more, and so if you could consider that portion of their business, then it might meet your
Marty, thank you
standards.
very much, because camping cabins.
Camping cabins.
Camping
Well, and I have a
cabins
question,
are subject
Zach.
to Innkeeper's tax.
Are they really?
Is there, are you limited on the number of board members we can
Now they're
have?
gonna
I
get
know
billed.
there's only a certain amount.
5%. Another 5%.
Actually,
Thanks, Marty.
I mean, you could
You're
change,
welcome.
you could change that. The county can change the number of board members.
I'm sorry,
The county can change the number.
can't?
Can.
Can.
So we could add some more board members and if,
But it
well,
has to
does
be
that, their
on-
board have to do that, or would we have, or would
Well,
commissioners have to do
So,
that?
if you did that, we would have to redo the calculation for how many the city gets in terms of
Oh, I see.
appointments, because they may get, like, if you, for instance, like, made it a 9-member board, you added 2 seats. First off, it's gotta be odd, but if you did add 2 more seats, that might result in, which is fine, I'm just telling you.
It was just a
City-
question, it was
City
just a
might end
question.
up with 3.
Is Austin not represented?
No, because I believe it's the largest.
Largest in this
Largest municipality?
Yeah.
Does Marty still have the bed and breakfast up there?
No.
Because, you know, I was such a, you should have told me that. Whether Marty still had the bed and breakfast. You're slacking, John.
So what would be, we're kinda having a sidebar over here, what would we have to do if we wanted to add 2 people?
You would have to adopt an amended ordinance, which you would have to do.
At our next meeting.
Well, unless,
I'm not mad if you start another meeting.
Don't leave mad.
Even though it says the largest municipality, can you, can that be a consideration that Austin is represented if you're adding, or is that because if they're not?
I mean, you could by like practice, consult with Austin about who Austin would like if you wanted to add that, and that be a part of the county's
Cause
additional.
would Hardy Lake be, the campground be considered part of that Austin area?
James Kelly, isn't it?
No.
Johnson.
It's Johnson.
Just county?
Just like, so you don't, I'm not saying that Austin.
I know, I'm sorry.
So,
Way off.
like,
Adding.
I wanna, if you added, 2 members, I guess my thought process, if I'm just looking at the math on, 2 are city now and 5 are county, if you added 2 members, I mean, I assume that
They
the
get half.
ratio is gonna be, 3 to 6. So the city of Scottsburg would still have 3.
Well, are we
And
still
so-
getting the numbers that we need to have the odds like we want?
And so that's why I was asking,
Leave the odd numbers.
Well, no, but we're
Simple
trying to get
majority.
the number of people
that's why I
in
was
there.
asking if we could
From
add
the-
another
Yeah, but
city.
5 now.
Oh, from the
He's
different
technically
groups.
The different groups.
Well, so that's a good point.
Is that gonna get our
So then-
percentage where we
Yeah,
have
I
to?
say probably could.
The new
Talking
People
four.
would have to be.
One of the new members would have to also be from
Right,
that.
I know,
Right.
you were saying they
Yeah,
have to be more.
yeah, that's a good point.
That goes to 9, so 5 would have to be
Cause the largest.
something to do with, we have that.
The large,
I don't,
large,
City of Austin or City of
Contact
Scottsburg?
information for
Was he saying that we can add,
I think
because
we,
it's the City of Scottsburg, someone picking this?
no, that's the.
I'm asking on their behalf.
but I could agree that we could let the city of Austin have one. legal
That's what I
office,
think.
Scottsburg
That's what I
the
was
same,
saying.
And then we could pick up one more, so.
If you do add one, Mike, what we were talking about in our separate meeting down here, is that you now go to 5 that have to be.
We have
related
5.
to that, and then one of the, if you add, one of them has to be that, which I think
They county.
It's
You're
my
off the
son.
hook.
It's my son, sorry.
The county executive shall also determine who will make the appointments to the commission, except that the executive of the largest municipality in the county shall appoint a number of the members of the commission, which number shall be the same ratio to the total size of the commission, rounded off to the nearest whole number. The population of the largest municipality bears the total population of the county. So they did a percentage calculation with the city population versus county population, came up with a percentage number, rounded it to the nearest whole.
They can pick their 2, and then we can amend it
Well, tourism is the purest form
to say that we're going.
of economic development. We don't have to build anything. We don't have to, we just bring, we have to invite them to come here. And if we've got good representation from the different aspects, and we add some more people to your board, I think would you not find that
So-
advantageous?
That's completely up to the council and to the commission.
We can do this without having to worry about the 30-day rule, right?
You're talking about
Adding
adding, that's a
You're gonna
whole
have-
separate issue.
No, we're gonna have to add yours, you're gonna have to make your appointments now, and then.
Well,
And
if
then
we
you can-
don't,
Which
they can,
ordinance is it?
they can
No,
have
that's
their appointments.
It's like the
that they think we can add to.
03-4 or something.
Yeah, that's the one.
I would still appoint, you to appoint, and then you can add later.
So, did you ask your question?
You guys have
Yeah.
to vote.
Yeah, I think adding is a whole separate.
Yeah, it is. It
Right,
is.
right.
I guess where I was going with it is that if we go beyond the January 30 date, that the appointments that the board would make, their board would make, they would appoint the board that they prefer.
That's correct.
And then after that, if we amend it to add 2 people or 4 or however many you wanna do, you would, at that time, we would add those people ourselves.
Well, we would potentially get to add 1, and I believe based on just, I'm doing quick math in my head, I assume that Scottsburg would get another appointment. So out of the 2 new appointments, you would get 1.
Could we not mandatory to be Austin instead of Scottsburg?
No,
I don't think you can do that. I don't think.
Cause
I
he
don't
said,
think you can do that.
by statute that he was reading, it has to be
It has to, it says largest municipality.
Laura, okay, I didn't hear
by
that part.
population.
So what are you guys thinking down here? You're awful quiet.
Taking it in.
Taking it in. Greg, what are you thinking?
Well, again, I'm more to the fact that we're meeting these positions with the right criteria. And so there were some things brought up, in Zach's conversation over here a while ago that's got me a little bit concerned on, that I think that we don't meet the criteria for a lot of these positions, so, for most, but, so I could see probably, although they're not up this time. So it's something I think we gotta consider here is, that these appointments are meeting the right criteria for their board as well, so.
So what's your thoughts about, adding?
I mean, I think it is a good idea.
It always has to come out to an odd number, so.
Yeah, it'd have to be two.
Right. So we can't, and there's an odd number now, so we can't add 2. Later, we could add 3.
No,
No.
you have to add two.
Well,
Seven.
wait a minute, well, no, wait a minute.
It's
because
already an odd number, so you've gotta add an even number.
That's, huh? That's why I'm saying, that's what, well, I guess that's what I'm saying, because we can't just add 2 people and then Scottsburg add 1, because that's gonna give you an odd that's gonna give you an even number.
That would give you an even number.
Right, that's where I was going with that.
What he's saying is if you add 2, puts you at a total of 9, you would get 6 appointments, and the city of Scottsburg would more than likely, by the numbers, get 3 appointments
So they're
on the
another
total
one.
board.
Depends on who's
Right,
got the
I'm
scale.
just saying that.
Well, there's that.
I mean, I don't know.
And quite honestly, the city may, you know, they may, quite honestly, like to have another appointment as well, on there, so, I think this could be.
If you went to 9, it would actually increase the city's percentage
Mhm.
effectively. Because,
But is it enough to gain them a full person?
no, I mean, I assume that it would be, they would get I mean, I don't know how you would have them have one of them rounded to the nearest whole unless they were so close on the bottom end when they rounded that somehow that would exclude that, so I guess that's possible.
I think in the past, one of the reasons that they wanted it to be directly related to tourism, because they're directly related, you know, a manager of a hotel has to report to their manager on the numbers, how much money, how much revenue is coming in. And so if they are actively participating in the tourism trade, they're gonna be more concerned with getting those people in here and getting that revenue up.
That's true, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as far as who meets these criteria, I think that you being a historian and doing the tours, they said, I just don't see how Jill would fit the true criteria of that. That's set for, you know, if you do the tours and you do the historic, I mean, you're engaged more in the tourism, that type of stuff. I think Jill I think that position is.
Joe is, because he has, well.
Yeah, she's
that's-
agreeing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
The last 2 summers, he's gone around with bus tours.
Right.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
agreeing with that.
Yeah, I just think
Myself,
Jill
I do
is,
not meet any
right,
criteria.
and that's what I
You
was
can't
saying.
tell a story? You can't tell a story?
I can, like he was working in the fire department for a long time, you know I can tell a story, but, as I say, I was just asked to serve on the board. Matter of fact, I think Diane's the one that called and asked about serving on the board 10 years ago, and I just did it as a civic.
It's been a long time ago.
10 years.
I get that. I just, like I said, I'm sure we've stretched that line pretty
Well,
thin
at one
sometimes.
point in time, we were having a lot of issues trying to find people that met the criteria.
It's a pretty gray line, so I mean, it's not,
And that's.
3 that are up for, and I just want to remake this statement.
Right.
The 3 that are up for reappointment of our existing board members are Joe Gibson, Jessica Collier, and David Wells.
Right. Yeah, no, I know,
Okay.
but if we're talking about the simple majority meet those, that's my feeling about the ones that you have saying that those meet those criteria, is my feeling.
And I just want everyone here to understand that we have tried to request the city meet the same criteria, and that hasn't always,
Well, yeah,
hasn't always been
Yeah.
accepted.
well, years ago, the people that owned the Ramada Inn lived here, the people that owned the Marion Hotel lived here. And, you never had a problem with people on a board, but now, you don't have that. Actually, people that own Campbell's Motel lived here, so, but, it's not that easy anymore, and when you talk about a innkeeper's tax, and most of the people that are owning hotels in our community anymore are corporations, and there's, yeah, you might be able to get the GM or something if they live in the area, so.
While we're all here together, this is a great platform to make this request. The way the innkeeper's tax is collected is it's a voluntary contribution that is sent from our hotels to the Department of Revenue. There is a period of time, we have not gotten a straight answer from the Department of Revenue just how long that lag time is between the time that they submit and the time that money is sent back to the county as an innkeeper's tax. We are one of, I say we as in Scott County, is one of less than 10 counties that have that being sent to the Department of Revenue. The majority of the counties do that collection themselves. So it is a stronger, sure, because we have one hotel that doesn't send that innkeeper's tax in, and it's not a big, I mean, the Department of Revenue doesn't care. I mean, they've got other issues, and they have other taxes that are quite honestly more important. Would the county ever consider being a collection point so that the hotels would then just change and send the money directly to the county so that we can audit those figures a little better, ensure that all hotels are paying that appropriately, as well as then incorporating, thank you, Marty, that camping cabins
And
I
that
never
would
understood
probably,
why we sent it up to the state to begin with, in
And
my
that-
opinion, instead of sending
It
it.
was
I can understand if you're
it's a choice that's
Marion
made
County.
instead.
Right,
I mean.
and that would be
Allen
something
County.
right.
So we could
that would
change
be
that.
something that, once all the books have come over, that's something that we can look into and discuss and consider.
That would be, I think though, that is that's a specifically council issue. Yeah, look at
That's
We'd
good.
have to get it on an agenda for us to
trying
be
to
able to
think
talk
of
about it.
where it is.
But we need, and like I
It's
said,
not
we
something
just
that I would
need
expect to take
we need
place
the books
in
first.
2023, but it was something that we might be able to put in motion
And
for
I
2025.
think, like Tony's saying, once we get our accounts mutually figured out and set, then, I mean, I'd be willing to look at that for you if that would help. Because I think that would help with your all's budgeting, your ability not to have that lag time, but I can't say whether I'd be for it or against it without it being on our agenda to look at.
The county fiscal body may adopt an ordinance to require that the tax shall be paid monthly to the county treasurer. If it's not adopted,
Let's
if
do
that's not
one,
adopted, then it goes
let's do one step at a time, let's get the books.
But yeah, don't let it forget, I mean, bring it to us after we get this going.
Yeah, I think if everybody else is doing that, or people's doing that, I think that's a simpler way, you know, and if, I don't know what other counties are doing, I'm sure they're doing, they're reporting straight to the state, so I'd say we ought to too, so, yeah, but that's a council's decision, so. All right.
A larger county like Marion County, where they've got who knows how many hotels, because, you know, when we look at the number of hotels we have, it shouldn't be too cumbersome.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple math. Randy, you got
Yeah, I
any
mean,
comments?
yeah. I think we probably need to take one of the appointments and add someone. And then we'll amend it to where there's another position added later. But as far as the position of who will be, dropped from the board, I believe I let that up to you guys to discuss and decide who. Because you know the board better than me, and to be honest with you, it's not a personal thing whatsoever. I believe that new blood's always good to have fresh ideas, and I believe in term limits and everything. So, but I'm not gonna tell you who to drop, just, that's my opinion.
No, you kinda have to.
Yeah.
We don't make a
Well,
decision.
I can, they can give me a suggestion and then we can decide then, right?
If they wanted to.
But he's made it clear that he won't, I mean.
This is I'm gonna be.
We are
honest
attorney.
with you right now. You don't appoint a member to fill any of the 3 vacancies, one of which I think,
Have to.
just legally, I don't think you have a option. I believe that Jessica Collier, think that she has to be reappointed.
Yeah, that's one of the vacancies you just talked about, right?
At least 2.
At least 2.
You do not reappoint, or if you do not reappoint, or you do not fill that vacancy within, the next
2 days.
3 days, 4 days, then you as the Board of Commissioners lose the authority to make the appointment.
Probably won't be compliant.
I'm gonna make this a little simpler right now. I'm gonna entertain a motion to get one of these out of the way, but I'm gonna entertain a motion to reappoint Jessica Collier to the Visitors Commission as a general manager of the Holiday Inn, so.
She's a brand manager.
She's a what now?
A brand manager for the corporation.
Okay, so not a
She is
not a GM.
Former GM, yes.
Okay.
Still good.
I second
So my motion still stays that I'm asking, creating a motion to reappoint Jessica Collier to the Visitors Commission as a brand manager for the Holiday Inn.
I second that motion.
I made a motion, Randy seconds that, Greg?
I second that as well.
So Greg makes that unanimous, so we taking care of one of them, so what's your guys' pleasure on the other 2? You know, I think Lindy's right in the sense that we have 7 members now, and I'm gonna tell you that I'm gonna support adding 2 more members to your board. I mean, it may cause you to pull your hair out, Mike, but I think we have some people that, I think want us to serve on this board, and I think that, you know, us giving them that opportunity with, you know, expanding it 2 people, I don't think it's really gonna kill anything, so with that, if we, right now, to make it legal, we have to have at least 4 people that are, something to do with tourism, and I think we're probably, skating around the edge on 1, I think. Don't know how I got it. But anyway, so what's your guys' pleasure on the other 2 appointments?
I would like to, do you wanna nominate somebody?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Brandy, Renew.
Who's that?
Brandy Renew.
Brandy.
Greg, I didn't catch the name, sir.
Brandy Renew,
Renew.
Java Station.
Java Station, RAN,
okay.
yeah, you know.
All right, Greg's nominated Brandy Renew.
Whose spot?
Huh?
Whose spot?
It's not for a spot, you know.
Well,
Well, you gotta take, yeah.
It's not for a spot. We have a group of people and we don't have to X somebody out, put somebody in. We just have so many board appointments.
Yeah.
Oh.
So.
There's no, it's not like, you're thinking of like, God, I'm blanking, the sewer board,
Okay.
that has like,
District.
the wards that they represent, and then there's some general.
No,
Okay,
no.
never mind that.
so we don't have to get rid of anybody, but her in.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, but it doesn't, you don't specifically take somebody off. I mean, you end up with 7 when you're done,
Oh.
so.
And I second Brandy.
All right, Greg's made a motion to, nominate Brandy Renew to, the Visitors Board. Randy's second that, and I'll make that unanimous, so. So, with that, you know, you wanna nominate somebody, or you? Where you at?
Just one for now, the we're all add later, so we can do that.
So I'm gonna make another motion here. I'm gonna make a motion to, retain Joe Gibson as, a local historian of Lexington and Scott County, so to retain to the board, so that's my motion, to retain Joe.
I'll make that motion, Mike, retain Joe.
So I made the motion, Greg seconds that, and Randy, where you at?
You guys have a opinion? I mean,
Guys are taking votes.
okay. I say keep Joe Gibson.
All right, Randy makes that unanimous. I'm gonna also entertain a motion at this meeting, cause it has to do with the tourism board, to, entertain a ordinance at our next meeting to, or whatever.
I will, if you want me to draft an amendment to,
Add to.
you want me to like repeal and replace, and just like basically, rather than like create a separate document that's just an amendment to 2004.
What's easier?
For me, and for probably the auditor,
That's what she wants. That is what she wants.
repeal and replace, just because
Clean slate.
it's cleaner than trying to, like, I represent boards that have, you know, like internal rules and stuff, and they have these amendments that they've done over time, and you look back and try and figure out, was this rule even like active anymore? Cause this amendment seems like it took it out. Or I can try and strike through language in the
Do
original.
whatever you think's right, and whatever Jennifer wants.
It all just clicked. It all just clicked.
Yeah, and again, not repealing and replacing the visitors commission, I'm not saying that, just kind of altering the
I don't know what
structure
I was thinking.
of the original.
I just figured that out, like it'll just light bulb.
Good, I'm glad.
With the book button.
But anyway, I don't know if I need to
I'll
make a
probably need
motion
to-
today to move that forward at our next meeting, so that.
I'll have to reach out to council for the city of Scottsburg and just kind of inform them that, we're doing this, and, we'll need to get a census for both, and see if it adds another member for them, which I think it will.
I hope it don't.
But,
But I mean, that's fine, I mean, okay, all right. Greg, you got anything else?
I don't, I just thank you all for coming in tonight. Appreciate it.
Do we have a second on that motion?
Which
Or
one?
do you still need the motion to have him do the repeal?
No, I don't think,
you don't necessarily, I don't need.
I just was asking, I was going to, just to move it along, but.
We can't take any action aside from
Oh,
what
what's
we
on the
noticed
agenda?
anyways, and just, I understand that there's a general consensus that expect an ordinance on agenda in a coming meeting.
Greg, again, do you have anything else? All I got.
Well,
Randy?
yeah, real quick. Mr. Wells, I'm sorry. Please don't take that personal.
Like I say, I was doing it as civic service, that's all. Volunteered for 32 years on the Scottsburg Fire Department.
Well, we appreciate the service you give to Scott County.
There's no problem whatsoever. Given my health, I wasn't sure how much longer I'd be able to serve that place.
Yeah.
I know Brandy has been on the, same thing up there in Jeffersonville, Indiana. She's got a lot of experience with it, and she's a local business owner, so she has a little bit of skin in the game, and that was the only reason.
I do have a question.
You can help Joe.
I do have a question. I thought there were 3 this.
There was,
They retained
Jessica,
two.
Joe,
we retained 2 and voted on a third.
Jessica Collier,
She stayed.
and Joe.
Joe, and then they.
Oh, they put Brandy on that.
Yep.
And I'll echo what these 2 guys said. Dave, I appreciate your years of service on that board, and you're gonna be around a long time, so don't worry about your health. You know, you can look at my mother being 90 the other day, and Raymond Jones being 91. I mean, so there's a lot of people moving around this county that's up in age. So, but as far as all the board, I wanna appreciate everything you guys do, and I know this is a new little bit of an adventure that we're gonna go through here. I'm glad Zach cleared the air with, it's pretty much gonna run like it has always ran. I mean, there's gonna be a couple of things that, more of a clerical type of thing, that it's, it's gonna run like a regular county department, so. And the other part of this is hopefully after at least 3 years of me sitting in front of a state board auditor, that he finally says, hey, I don't worry about that over there anymore, so. So I'm gonna turn it to the council and ask if any of you guys have any questions, statements, or
One
whatever.
statement I would say is, I appreciate you guys being here, your time on that board and the movement that you've done in this county for them, and hopefully you'll still stay connected somewhat, and look forward to working with you and any of your board in the future.
Yep.
What he said.
All right, is that,
I wanna echo, I mean, it was, I wanna thank everybody for coming too, and for members of the commission for coming. I know that this is not a normal meeting time, and we all have to make time in our schedules to do this, so I appreciate that.
I will ask Mike Chesser, now that, I won't say the majority of your board was here, but a good portion of them are here, do we need to still have that meeting on the 9th?
Sorry?
And the February 9th meeting that you emailed back,
I don't.
or you think we're good?
No.
Okay.
At this time, we've got things we need to accomplish, and, we'll start working on it right away.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion from the commissioners to adjourn our side of the meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Randy makes a motion to adjourn. Greg?
I'll second that.
I'll make that unanimous, so we're done.
And I will make a motion to adjourn our portion of the meeting, and also, all right, all in favor? All right.
Kill the bird.